as long as they're not, we want to try not to hurt anybody. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to get a level of expertise out of the crowd. How many of you are currently raising monarchs? Oh boy, okay. So I have a feeling I'm not the expert in this crowd. So if I just totally say something stupid that is like really, please raise your hand and let me know. But I want this to be something that we can all learn from, and try to keep our emotions at a good, friendly level. Let's put it that way. Because I do know that we're very passionate about this, and it has a lot to do with the environment as well. And we hate to see this stuff just deteriorate, and we're losing forests and things like that. So that it really sticks to our heart. So with that being said, I gave you guys an outline, so we're going to kind of follow that. This microphone is going to mess with me. I can see it already. So I'm going to try to follow my notes as much as possible. So I just kind of want to talk about the actual biology of the butterfly and its life cycle. So it starts with the egg, which came first, the chicken or the egg. And did you know that an adult butterfly female can lay up to 300 to 800 eggs in their lifetime? They can lay up to 250 eggs in one day. Wow. They lay one egg at a time. With some caterpillars will lay lots of eggs. They lay one egg at a time on one leaf. And they do that for a reason, because if they overlay and put too many eggs on a leaf, they actually will cannibalize each other. So, and the kicker about it is out of all those eggs, only 20 will survive. So this is Mother Nature at her best. Because, you look, that's why they lay so many eggs, because they know there's going to be issues. And there's so many different things that take these guys out, different levels. So we're going to touch on that as well. So the eggs are the size of a pinhead, and those caterpillars emerge in 3 to 5 days. So the caterpillar goes through 5, they call instars or steps. So when they're first hatched, the first thing they do is they go eat their eggshell. And then that's why if the other eggs are laid near them, if they come out first, they could actually go over to their other buddy and say, I'm still kind of hungry. I think I'm going to get me some egg over here. And then he goes over and eats his buddies. So that's why they're pretty good about not laying more than one egg on one leaf. So that little guy, he comes out, and he will, after he eats his egg, he takes his first bite of the milkweed. Now at this point, this is danger number 1. Because of the latex in the milkweeds, which is sticky, if they chew on that and it gums up their mouthpiece, their mouth, they could die. So there's death number 1. If they are successful in having that first bite, they're able to go ahead and eat the rest of that leaf, and then they rest, and then they molt. So that takes a couple days. 1 to 3 days. Okay, so then their second instar takes 1 to 3 days. All the other ones, their layer, between each level, they molt. And I was reading about, I've heard that you're not supposed to touch the caterpillars because it could harm them. They say you can touch them, but you have to be careful when they're not, you can't do it when they're molting. And they're molting about every 3 days. So you have to be really careful when the best thing to do is just if you need to reintroduce some leaves or something into your cage, if you're doing a captivity, is to put the plant in there and let them crawl over onto it. They will. They'll find it. Okay, so the third day they eat another leaf or two, or the second step, they eat another leaf or two, and then their color starts to change. 1 to 3 days, molt. The third one, they, again, take another 3 days. They will get more color, and their tentacles, their little feet, start to grow. So you start to see those a little more. The fourth step, instar they call it, is also 1 to 3 days. And they're about 1 inch long at that point. And they can eat a whole leaf in under an hour. So now these guys are hungry. So now you guys are running down to the nursery going, I need more leaves. My caterpillars are going crazy right now. Okay? And then their fifth step, the fifth instar, this one is their last step. And it takes 3 to 5 days for them to go through that. And this is right before pupation. And they start moving pretty quickly because they're looking for a place to go hang out. Now, in my case, of course, those of you who are doing it in captivity, they're going to do it in your cage. But in the wild, usually I don't find them on the milkweed plant. A lot of times they'll go somewhere else. And they're usually hanging underneath something. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of yeps out there. Yeah. So they're not usually on the milkweed plant, which is kind of a good thing because I'll talk about that later when we talk about the dreaded parasite, which we're going to talk about. Okay, so then they will go and find a place to attach, and they put a little silk button, and they attach to that button, and they'll land upside down and turn into a J, and then they split out of their skin one last time, and there's your chrysalis. Now, it's not a cocoon, because cocoons are spun with silk. They call these a chrysalis because there is no silk. Just a little fun fact. Okay, so while they're in that state, that's called the pupa. They are forming, their mouths are going from chewing to sucking. They're growing their wings, of course. And this takes 10 to 14 days. So then the butterfly emerges. And once the butterfly emerges, it takes a couple hours for it to pump its wings and get it nice and fluffy so that it can take off. So it's very critical that you guys don't mess with these guys when they're trying to do that. I know it's hard, kids, let me go hold the butterfly. We'll give them a chance to get to where they're puffed out so you don't hurt their wings. Okay, and then once they do that, they fly off looking for nectar. And if, depending upon which generation they are, they will also breed and lay eggs. So this makes them a migratory pollinator, which is really cool because they go a long ways, and we're going to get into that. So now we're going to go about their migration. How many of you, it takes a full year for the monarch to make its trip. How many of you know how many generations it takes for them to get back to where they belong? 4. She's correct. 4 generations will pass before they get back to where they started. So they start in Texas generally, and this is generalization because there's so many. We're talking billions. There's so many of them that are doing kind of their own thing. Like the rest of us, I'm not going to go with the flow. I'm going to do what I want. So you're going to have some that aren't doing that. And there's also other colonies all over. There's some in Florida that don't even move. They stay in Florida. There's some in Texas and throughout the United States. So they do different things. But I'm talking about the ones that we generally deal with. So they start in Texas. And their journey is to go to southern Canada. And they follow the milkweed bloom. That's what they do. That's what they're looking for. So it takes 4 to 6 weeks on average for one of the generations. So the first generation starts in about mid-March, and that's in Texas. Then they start heading up. And the second generation is usually laying their eggs between May and July. Then the third generation are usually laying their eggs between July and August. All this time, they're heading up north. By the fourth one, they're laying eggs in September and October, those ones. And then they are going to, at that point, they are triggered by whatever, nature somehow, they are triggered to realize, we are now going to be the super generation. We are going to fly from southern Canada to, some of them stop in Pismo Beach, and the rest of them go down to Mexico. And they will do it, each generations, even though they're not the original generation, will a lot of times go to the same tree that their grandpas and great-grandpas and what-havers do. So that's somehow in there, maybe in their DNA. They're not quite sure what triggers them, but length of day is a lot to do with it, because they want to get to where it's warmer in the winter. So their southern journey starts from November to February, and they call this the super generation, and those guys can live up to 8 months. And also what they do is they need to save energy because they're flying. They can fly up to 250 miles a day, and their entire trip can be 3,000 miles they can actually fly. So it's pretty amazing. And what they do is they catch the thermals, so they can fly a mile high. So they're pretty obvious. They're pretty awesome, right? And so they catch the thermals, and they also, their bodies will store more fat than the other generations do. So something changes inside of them, and they also don't mate. They're like, we're serious here. We're not going to be fooling around while we're doing this. We are heading down south. So, they've got their mind on one thing. So they what they call it a diapause, meaning that they pause their sexual development until they get back down to Texas, or down to their rounds. And then when they're ready to go back to Texas, their sexual organs develop, and then they continue on. A year later, when the cycle is finished, then they'll continue on there to start the next generation. So they're the first ones that lay the eggs that start the first generation that starts back up to Canada. Does that make sense? See that? I mean, it's like really, really awesome that they do all this stuff. So they overwinter in the Sierra Madre mountain range and in Pismo Beach in the eucalyptus. And Pismo, I checked, it's October through February. You can go see the butterflies. And you just Google butterflies Pismo Beach, and it'll bring up all the stuff. Okay, so now we're going to talk about their enemies. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so the big hubbub that started this kind of whole controversy in my mind was the tropical milkweed, the bad guy. Okay, so, and it's funny because somebody came up to me, did you know, on Facebook, they just run this article about how bad the tropical milkweeds are. And I did read that article, and that article was published in 2015. Since then, they have done some research on the tropical milkweed. This is Asclepias cerasivissa. This milkweed actually has healing properties for the monarchs, and it actually helps keep the pests, the parasites that we're worried about, helps them to not be so infected. They still get infected. So let me stick to my notes because I don't want to get off track. Okay, this parasite, and it's on your notes there. I cannot pronounce that name. It's so we're going to refer to that as OE, okay? Okay, these are parasites. They actually live in the caterpillar. They live in the caterpillar. These parasites do. Their spores, or their eggs, I guess the spores are not viable. What they do is they have to be eaten by the caterpillar. Once they're eaten, once the spores are eaten, then they turn into these parasites that go through the gut of the caterpillar. The kicker is that when they go through the caterpillar, they go into their pupal form, into the chrysalis. They turn into the butterfly is developing in there. Well, those little parasites go through asexual and sexual reproduction. So they're having a party down in there. And then they come out, they put their spores on the outside of the adult butterfly as it's developing. So when the butterfly comes out of the chrysalis, it is covered with these spores. Now, if the chrysalises are hanging above milkweed plants or other caterpillars, those spores, it's kind of like, they described it like glitter. You know how glitter is? Kind of gets everywhere. That's what these spores do. So if the chrysalises are opening above plants or other caterpillars, they're infecting, if they have the spores, they're infecting the other leaves. But the spores have to be eaten. So when they lay their eggs, those spores also attach to the egg. What's the first thing the caterpillar does? Eats the egg. So then it gets infected. So then it starts the cycle all over again. But it's a parasite. So parasites are not usually supposed to kill their host because they're living off of their host. So what they were saying was the longer, if like your caterpillars are hatching out later in the season and they're not getting the parasites as much, or if they've gone, or maybe it's actually earlier in the season because there's not as many parasites. As the season goes on, you're going to have more parasites getting dumped on plants, etc., and they're going to eat more of those spores. The more spores they eat, the more infected they are. So some of them will eventually be so infected that it can kill them. And that's the oozing and this and that. So you might find that later in the season more than you would earlier in the season. Now, let me get back to my notes. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, it usually doesn't kill them, it just weakens them. The adults transmit. Okay. So you can, and I was thinking, well, because they were saying if they're in captivity, it's very important for you to sterilize your equipment or your cages. And they were saying that it was a college that I got this information from, a university, I think it was. And they were saying, oh, well, we put ours in an autoclave. Oh, well, who's got an autoclave, right? So they did say that you can help kill some of the spores, not all of the spores, with a solution of 1 to 19 bleach to water. 1 part bleach to 19 parts water. And you can soak your leaves in this solution, and they do, you can go on butterflyfunfacts.com, and they have a link to a YouTube video that shows you how to wash your eggs. So you can wash your leaves and your eggs in the solution, and that will kill some of those spores. And they tell you how you can look for the spores. You can take a piece of tape on the adults and put this clear tape on their abdomen and pull it off and then look at it underneath the microscope. I mean, yeah, who's got the microscope? So you've got to pretty much assume towards the end of the season you might be getting spores. So if your caterpillars start acting weird, you got to figure, okay, something's up here. And there are diseases. I didn't even go into the diseases because this parasite thing is the one that's been first and foremost because it's given this guy a bad name. A bad rap. The reason why monarchs lay their eggs on this one is because it does have medicinal properties that help those guys fight that parasite. It has, this particular one is higher in a certain chemical, it's a steroid, that kills or inhibits these parasites. So the monarchs, and they're called milkweed butterflies. They got their name monarch because they were so beautiful and they considered them royalty, so they kind of named them monarchs. But they are milkweed butterflies. I mean, that's what they do. They go after the milkweeds. They follow the milkweeds. So they will lay their eggs on these over any other milkweed that's around because they know there's healing properties with this plant. And they've done experiments, which came out after that article. So what the key is that we're recommending that you cut your plants down to 6 inches. It's October through November. And even as throughout the growing season, you can do that. Now, I was also thinking is why couldn't we take that bleach ratio and take a sprayer and spray off some of those leaves, and because the eggs are okay getting wet because of the rain, so we could spray off the plants with some of that bleach solution, and maybe that would help as well. I didn't read that anywhere, but I'm just thinking maybe that would help. But also cutting them down, getting the old foliage out of there, and starting with fresh new foliage. But they have it in them. I mean, it's very common for them to have this parasite. So we've been selling this particular plant for years. And when we first got it, it used to go dormant because we were cold. But it doesn't go dormant anywhere. anymore. But the other ones, the native ones, they do go dormant. But guess what? If you're flying along and you see this plant and you see this plant, which one do you think you're going to go to? You're going to go to this one. And that's why, too, because they know this is going to be healing for the parasites. And they were saying that the monarchs that are infected know they're infected, the adults, which is why they'll make sure they search out that plant. So they're flying around looking for that plant. So the other issues, as we have now, is that pretty good? Yes. Which one?
The one they like, that one.
Sarasavissa. This is the tropical milkweed. Yeah, and this is what we carry. We've got a bunch out front. Yes.
What time of year then should we cut this tropical one down?
Oh, let me get you the exact.
Was it later October?
Yeah, I believe it's, yeah, let me make sure. I want to make sure I give you the right. Yes, November through February, actually. November through February. Okay, so then, so does that kind of give you, yes?
So just make sure I heard this right. I know there's some nurseries that are just not carrying tropical at all anymore, and they're only doing the native.
Right.
But you're saying that actually the tropical has more healing properties than the native.
Correct.
And do the tropical as long as you cut it all the way back.
6 inches.
Through February.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. Because, well, we kind of questioned those people, and they felt that their customers weren't smart enough to do it. I believe my customers are smart enough. We just have to educate you. Because we want them to survive. We do, yes.
And I just want to warn everyone not to get the milkweed sap on your face, through your eye. I brushed my hair out of my eye on a windy day, and it's really dangerous for your eye. I couldn't see out
It
of
is
my eye for 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's poisonous.
I
It
had
is.
to go to a cornea specialist.
Yeah, okay, so be sure you do not get the milkweed milk sap in your eye. Good tip. Because they are poisonous, yes. Yes. Right. Yeah. Right. Because they. Okay, what she said was that she got a native that she was recommended to get, guilted into getting, and she planted it, and she didn't get anything. And her neighbor had worms, milkweed, or caterpillars, and she was running out, so she took some of her native over there, and the caterpillars wouldn't eat it. So what they suggest is that you plant a couple varieties. So, and I do have some seeds on the table back there. We have the common milkweed and a showy milkweed. Also, you can get, off of the milkweed, you can get the seeds. I mean, these guys little flip all over the place. Because they're weeds.
Do you just plant those?
Yeah, you can plant these.
Okay.
So, yes.
If you do plant them in the ground,
Yes.
will it take over your garden?
The question is, if we plant them in the ground, will it take over your garden? Yes, it will if you let it. It's a weed.
Just cut off the pods? And
Yes.
It shouldn't,
No, it shouldn't.
spread.
Right. I'll get to that. We're going to talk about the milkweed care. So I just also wanted, now, is that okay? You guys got the parasite thing? Perfect. Awesome. Okay, hold your questions because I need to move on. I didn't want to get too late. Okay. The other things that are problems with the monarchs is they do have predators. There are some predatory wasps, and there's one wasp for each stage. There's a wasp for the eggs, there's a wasp for the caterpillar, and there's a wasp for the chrysalis. Now, again, see, this all plays into why we lay 800 freaking eggs, and only 20 of them survive. Because Mother Nature, even though we would love to have this whole country flying around with butterflies, says, nah, we need to keep them healthy. Now, saying that Mother Nature does not know that we were going to start deforesting southern parts of Mexico, where they go. They did not plan for the farms that the milkweed used to grow on. The farms were smaller, and they had ditches in between those farms. Well, they don't have that anymore. They have mega farms, and they are putting Roundup Ready crops on those mega farms, and then they're spraying the pajibas out of the land and killing all the milkweeds. So that's why they're reaching out and saying, okay, let's everybody start planting milkweeds, because we need to give them their habitat. So again, if we're responsible with what we're doing, we can hopefully make a difference for the monarchs. So the Roundup Ready issue, crops, that's a problem. They're cutting down the forest in the Sierra Madres illegally, so they're kind of cracking down on that. So hopefully they'll get that under control. And I was reading something about the ones in Pismo have been declining. And they were attributing it to the milkweed, which I don't see how it could, knowing that what we just learned, I just find it hard to believe. But that's what they're claiming. So I don't want to go against them one way or the other, but that's kind of where I'm at on that. Okay, and let's see. Oh, and then of course us using pesticides in our yards. Now, when we sell the milkweed, because we know that's what you're doing with it, we will put them, if we do have to spray, usually don't spray the nursery, but if we do have to spray the nursery for one reason or another, those milkweeds go onto a thing and they go clear over in our loading zone. Now, used to we'd stick them up in the back and this and that, and we found that they are so sensitive to pesticides. Even when we put them over there, and then we brought them back and put them in the nursery, the ones that sat in the back row next to the other plants, they killed the caterpillars back there because they were touching the ones that were already sprayed. So you have to be very careful. So if you got your neighbor over there that's got malathion and 7 and junk flying all over the place, that could be an attributing for why maybe your caterpillars aren't doing well. So they are very sensitive to that. Okay, so let's see. All right, get back to my notes here. We were at. Okay, where's my notes? Too many papers here. There we go. Okay, so now the host plants. So we've got the milkweed types, and I pretty much these are not considered native, but they have naturalized. So they're in Louisiana, Florida, Texas, Southern California. They're selling them as annuals all the way on up the trail. So they don't die down, but other places they do, and they have to replant them. So they're not considered native, but they have naturalized, and they've been here for over 200 years. So, and also one of the things was the fires. They had the fires up north, and that took out a lot of their land, or their stuff. So, it's environmental, unfortunately. Okay, so now, care for the milkweed. So I'm going to mostly talk about the tropic. We also have the tuberosa, and this is to appease the people who want natives. We do have them. So we're going to talk about this. This guy will actually get, and I did bring some, and I'll probably just pass it around because it's probably a bit easier. There is, if you can see in here, there should be. Well, there's some seed pods in here. Oh, yes. There's a little red beetle that attacks the milkweed. It's called a milkweed beetle. Now, I'm going to leave it up here so we don't get it. Somebody drop it and it'll just fly all over the place. So I'll have it up here. You can look at it. They're called milkweed beetles, and what they do is on the seed pod, this is the seed pod, they will go and they inject the seed pod with an enzyme, here we go, and the enzyme causes those seeds to turn to mush, and then they have little straw mouths, and they stick their little straw mouth into the little mush pot, and they suck out the mushy juice. Yum, yum. So that's what they do. Now, in a way, it's a good thing, because if they didn't, we would be overrun with milkweeds. Because I did one time, I had some and oh yeah, great, let them see it. They came up so many, it was like ground cover. And if you don't pull them out when they're young, they're just like a weed. They break off. So be sure you want them. But usually, if you are raising monarchs, you're like, yes, bring it on. I want as many as I can get. No problem. They also get aphids. And believe it or not, you can use ladybugs, because ladybugs will eat your little monarchs. So we can use ladybugs for the aphids. Now they also, because ants carry the aphids, they gave a recipe for, let me see if I can get it here. They gave a recipe for killing the ants, or you put it at the base of the, here it is. It's 1 tablespoon powdered sugar, 2 equal parts baking soda, and you put it in a little cup or a little saucer or whatever, lid, and you set that at the base of the plant. And the ants will go in there and they'll get this, the baking soda messes with their insides. So it'll kill the ants. So that helps to keep them out of there. You can hose them off with water, and again, when you're hosing them off with water, guess what? You're probably hosing off some of them spores. So hose them off with water works. I will go up, and I'm probably grossing people out, but I'll just smash it. Yeah, it's just like, get off there. So, and I have had some, hang on a second. 1 moment, please. I have had some results with taking banana peels, believe it or not, making them into little strips and hanging them over the milkweed. It seems to keep them away. I don't know why that's going to work. Yes?
What was the recipe you said?
Oh, it's 1 tablespoon powdered sugar. Powdered sugar to 1 part baking soda.
Same, right?
Baking soda. Yeah. And that'll help to keep the ants from carrying, because the ants carry those aphids. They live off the aphids. So if you got ants in your plants, you get problems. Oh, my little caterpillar's here. My little guy's climbing out. Get him here. Okay. Let me out of here. Okay, so that's how to take care of the milkweed. All right, nectar plants. So nectar plants, this is called a host plant. This is called a host plant, which means they lay their eggs on it. And milkweed is their only host plant. That's why they call it milkweed butterfly. The nectar plants, on the other hand, are what the adults go after. And now is probably when we should be providing those for them, because they're making their travel back here pretty soon. So they're going to want to stop off and gas out in your backyard. Now I saw a female, and you can't tell the difference between a male and a female. The male has 2 little black spots on its wing, and the female doesn't. So you can Google that, and they'll show you a picture so you can see it. Because it's easier for, it's easy for me to say it, but it's hard for you to visualize. So if you Google it, you can see it. I saw a female the other day. She was not laying eggs. She was just hanging out, getting some stuff. So that might be an early one headed down. So, and if they're heading down from Pismo, I mean, it's kind of weird how they do it. This is Mother Nature. I mean, it's not meant to be, like strict. Okay, so the bottle brush. This one is called Goldenrod, and this one's going to actually die down. It's a herbaceous perennial, which we call, meaning that it dies down to the ground and then comes back again in the spring. So they like this one here real well. And this is a dwarf Buddleia. And these all they also will attract other butterflies as well. This one's called dwarf Buddleia. Butterfly bush. They call it butterfly bush. They actually like blackberries. So they'll go for and they will eat some fruit. Probably if it's mushed or something, they would, or it's really ripe, maybe. I've never really seen them on fruit, but that's what one of the websites said. These are zinnias. This one is called Profusion. I like this one because it's kind of short, compact. It doesn't get as much mildew as some of the other ones do. And it actually will go into December, January sometimes. So it's a nice one to use. This one is called Agastache. This is really a good one. Hyssop is the other name. And this one's called Blue Boa. So this one's kind of fun one. And your foxgloves, they like the foxgloves. And these ones in the back, I have, this one is a Senecio or flame vine. It's not, I didn't see it on a website, but I have this plant and they do visit this plant. And it gets big, it's a vine. And in the spring, it looks like a flame. Yes?
Kathy, are these plants all displayed in the nursery together?
Not together, no. We want you to go looking for that. Because that way you'll see other things you want. You can come up, I'm gonna leave this stuff up here. Yeah.
Just wanted to know the name of that one.
It was called flame vine, Mexican flame vine.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
okay.
And what's the purple one?
This one
You
This
said
one
the-
is Agastache Blue Boa. You know the boa. No, the question was, does this die down? No, it doesn't. It does get its little winter look like a lot of the perennials will. So you just kind of cut it back. It'll still be there. It may not be flowering a whole lot, but it doesn't die down. It stays there. And then I have honeysuckle. They like honeysuckle, the honeysuckle vine. And they like Duranta. This one is Duranta. This is Sweet Memories, Duranta. But this one I put a caution on because it does have poisonous berries. So if you have kiddos or puppy dogs that like to eat berries, probably would not want that one. But it's, they're on it all the time. So will the swallowtails. Swallowtails like that too. Okay, so let's see.
Lantana?
What's that?
I thought they went to Lantana.
Yeah, we go to Lantana. I've never really seen a monarch as such on Lantana, but they do go to a lot of different, I mean, they're going after, these are their like number one preferences, but I'm sure if they see something that they like, they're gonna stop. And also, the one thing now, I was, my 3 monarch mythbusters. Okay, is tropical milkweed, Asclepias cerasivus harmful to monarchs? Only if we don't take care of it properly. Will the tropical milkweed disrupt the monarch's migration program or pattern? No, because when they're going from south or from north to south, they're not going to go, oh, Bert, check that thing out. I'm not going to migrate. They're not going to do that. Their DNA is telling them they've changed. They're storing fats. They're not mating. They know that they're different. So they're not going to, they may stop to drink, but they're not going to stop and hang. Unless they're just rebels. We still have our rebels. There's always going to be a rebel in the crowd. But we're talking billions. So if we got 1 or 2 in your backyard, oh well, let them be. But you do have to worry about that parasite. Okay. And the last one is the tropical milkweed responsible for the decline in the monarch populations. I'm going to let you make that decision. Okay, if you have any questions, yes.
Is what you're saying, is it going to be posted anywhere that we could,
We are going to, see this fancy camera right here? This has been recording us.
Oh, good.
For me. You guys, if you're wanted by the, you're probably, no, just kidding. And we are doing it live, and you can get our archives. You can get any of my Facebook Live stuff in the archives on our website.
On your website.
Yeah, the Green Thumb. Yes.
So the wasps, is that the one, because I was having that problem where they were injecting something into the chrysalis or the caterpillar.
Yes.
And then you see that white string come
Yes.
out where it's
Yes.
like their eggs laying?
That's
Is there
correct.
a way to prevent that or
No.
control that?
No.
No?
Well, grow them inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
I read that, or so I'm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
The white string,
Yes.
because I've lost like 75%
Yeah.
of my population.
Yeah. And
The caterpillars, the chrysalis caterpillars have been injected.
yeah.
They die dead, or the chrysalis never.
Right. And I had a gal tell me that she had maggots come out of her caterpillars. That's the other one. Yeah, I know, it's gross. It's like, you know, Disney, I don't watch Disney shows because they always kill somebody in there. It's like, I know it happens, but I don't want to watch it, right? You know, ugh. Yes.
The plants over there, were you going to talk about those?
This is the Duranta, and these are the tropical milkweeds.
Is that the purple? The
Yes, that's this one. Mine at home is 12 feet tall. Yes.
Did you say you bake the banana peel and put it on?
No, you just make it in strips and hang it over the branches.
Oh.
Well, usually up around the flowers, because that's kind of where they, yes.
Is there a difference between the orange plant and the ones that are mixed orange and yellow? Or I should say the yellow and.
Yes, there's like 3 of them. There's the yellow one, there's an orangish one, and then there's a red one. And sometimes they'll plant them all together. And that's what I was saying. They recommended that you should do a couple types. Now I've got the yellow one, and I also have the one. It's called Family Jewels, and it makes fuzzy balls, but I'm not sure which is worse. Great. It makes a seed pod that looks like it's a ball with fuzz on it. So, I mean, it is called fuzzy balls. But, and it'll turn a little red. I actually had a neighbor from a distance, thought they were like peaches. He says, what, is that peach tree? I'm like, are you kidding me, you moron? but they're actually kind of pretty. The flowers are white, and then they get these little puff balls, and then those puff balls open up and spread those seeds, those little fuzzy seeds. But I've noticed on mine, it seems like the red and the orange ones seem to be more their go-to. The yellow ones they go to as well. It might, but you know, maybe somebody else has a different. Try different ones. See which ones work best.
I find exactly the opposite. I
Okay.
like the yellow ones, and they'll stay away from the mixed.
So there you go. I think they're just being picky. Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to say, there's a Facebook site called Beautiful Monarch, and it has a lot of educational things on it.
Yes.
It's just beautiful photos.
Yes, I ran into a couple of
On Facebook.
Beautiful Monarch on Facebook. Yes.
I have a question about you were saying the ladybugs, it's called aphids, but I know the ladybugs will eat monarch eggs.
It's not what I had heard, but where did you get that info?
Online.
You did online. Yeah. Now see, that's the thing. Is there so much information online? Oh, the question was, she had heard that the ladybugs will eat the eggs. And I asked her where she had heard that, and she said, well, it was online. Because everything is true online. That's the problem with the internet. Unfortunately, it's a problem. It's also a blessing, is that we have all these different sources of information. And what I had to do is, after reading about 1 million of them, and my eyes are cross-eyed, I tried to get the ones like the universities, places that are ed science, and then put them together and try to find the ones that were reputable, that were saying the same thing. Because some of them are saying total opposites. So, like I said, I understand why you all are confused. Yes?
I also heard praying mantises.
Yes, they will eat them. Praying mantis and yellow jackets will also eat the butterflies. Mice, rodents will eat the chrysalis. Yes?
I got a habitat that I have under the porch, and it's actually a reptile habitat, so it's a nice kind of big one. And the reason I got it was because they were talking about the parasitic flies. I found that like 90, they all live now that they're in the habitat. I just want to put a plug in for doing that because basically mine all died when they were outside because of that parasitic fly.
And it could be too that we sell those for caterpillar killers. So you be careful when you're buying parasitic wasps and you're raising your monarchs, because they don't care what caterpillar they parasitize.
Mine were the flies just
Right.
all
Yeah.
covered.
Right. Yeah, the hover flies. Yeah. So, I mean, hopefully, and again, like I said, that's why they lay so many eggs, and that's why they have such a high mortality rate, is because there's all of these factors. Yes.
If you plant the milkweed, the tropical milkweed in your yard, which is the host, will that attract wasps?
Wasps as in the predator wasps?
Yes.
Well, it would attract, well, if something is there that they would eat, it would attract them, sure. But I don't have that issue in my yard. So I got birds and all kinds of stuff, and I don't spray a lot of stuff. So I think it's kind of your own. Now you were.
I think they do. It does attract wasps, but maybe it's because there's something on it.
Right.
I have a
Yeah.
lot of aphids.
Okay. Yeah,
maybe
and they
that's-
will go for aphids too.
Okay.
Some of them will. Yeah, because they'll parasitize those. Yes.
Could you discuss whether or not it's okay to keep the tropical milkweed in a pot versus the ground?
Oh yeah, they can go in pots.
So if we buy that size,
Mhm.
when do we pot it into something bigger?
Well, this one is ready to go into something bigger. You can see the roots kind of coming out the bottom. Or if these guys are weeds. I mean, I've got them growing out of cracks in my pond. So they don't need a whole lot of soil. So if he's happy and healthy and the pot he's in, leave him be. If he starts getting funky, maybe next year he might transfer him into a little bit bigger pot. The bigger the pot, the bigger they'll grow. But don't go from this and go, put it in a big old pot and forget about it. No, put a bunch of them in a big old pot and forget about it. That works. But most plants, and milkweed included, and they don't need regular soil, nothing fancy. Potting soil if you're putting them in the pot, just a regular planter's mix if you're putting them in the ground. These guys, I've got them. I carry them sometimes as bog plants, so they can take a lot of water. They can go dry. They're weeds. They grow. But that's, in the farms, they were in like the ditch beds, along the ditches and stuff. So again, yes.
I don't know if you're going to go into this later, but I wanted just to mention the fact that if you use Miracle Grow or any of those fertilizers on milkweed, it's very harmful to the caterpillars.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
She's saying that if you don't use organic fertilizers, that it's harmful to the caterpillars. I can't say one way or the other, but
Well,
I would
my
agree with it.
husband actually poured, Miracle Grow
Yeah.
on them. Caterpillars just were yellow. They never did it.
Oh.
It's horrible.
Well, she said that she had used Miracle Grow on a plant, and the caterpillars didn't do well. Didn't do well. So that makes sense to me. I mean, I better stop or I'm going to get off on the Monsanto thing. Okay.
Do we have more wasps this year?
Oh yeah, because of the rain.
And we haven't had very little caterpillars, I think.
Yeah, because the predators are there for sure, and it's I've had more stupid bad caterpillars this year than my tomatoes look like Swiss cheese, and it's not just the hornworm. I'm getting the cabbage loopers, and that's not normal. So for me anyway. So I don't know. It's the rain. Hopefully we get some more rain. I wouldn't want some more rain. Yes.
My son and I have been having a debate.
Okay. Debate.
He seems to think that a lot of these plants that we're doing to make this environment so attractive is keeping these monarchs from migrating.
Well, again, that's. I don't believe in that with the rate of research that I've done, but you guys are all welcome to have your opinion, because it's a DNA thing. It's a nature thing. In almost every article that I read, all said it's the deforestation and it's the Roundup Ready farming and pesticides were the big reason for the decline. So I don't agree with the more plants that we plant, the more nectar plants that we give them, the more tropical milkweeds that we can give them to lay their eggs and not have problems with the parasite. In my mind is the better thing. But that's in my mind, and it's kind of weird. So, yes.
Did you say the tropical milkweed in November, we should cut it back?
November to February, cut it down to 6 inches. I mean, you could cut it to the ground, and it's still probably going to come back. Yeah, because they're pretty tough. They're pretty tough. And save the seeds. Those seeds are so easy to save, and just replant them again the next year if you want to. You could kind of just take them out if you want. But the key is no pretty flowers in the winter, You know, this is our, if we're gonna have the responsibility of having this in our yard, we need to take the be responsible and cut them down when we're supposed to. Yes?
Do we need to cold stratify seeds in California?
Not these, no.
Okay.
No. The question was, do we need to cold stratify? No, they're weeds. They'll grow. Just like pot, they can just grow. Yeah. Yes.
What about the black spots I get on my leaves on the tropical?
The black spots is usually, it could be edema from just a little too much water.
Too much water.
Yeah. Yes,
Is it
Beth.
hard? Oh,
Sorry.
How much water do they take? Because we're trying to do a lot of water conservation. Is there one that you recommend for low water that still blooms?
Pretty much all of these.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Because guess what? They're out in nature, most of them, so they're pretty hardy. Okay, let's see. Yes,
Is the black spot harmful? Do you need to pull those leaves off, or is it okay?
I would. I'd pull them off, just in
Will
case.
Will it hurt the caterpillars if we leave it on and they eat that?
I didn't read any information that said that. The only thing that they were saying, now there are diseases, and I didn't even go into that because I didn't have time to research that. There are diseases, and they said if your caterpillars are acting weird, you figure they've got a disease and get them out of there. Especially if you're rearing them it's very key, kind of like the beekeepers, you know, the amateur beekeepers. They don't know what they're doing, and they're introducing all these parasites and all this weird stuff into the bees. It's kind of the same thing. So if you're rearing monarchs, you need to be very mindful of that parasite and making sure that you're sterilizing stuff with that bleach. The one article said that bleach is your friend. So, and the Ebola, they killed Ebola with bleach, so it's pretty good stuff. Okay, I'm gonna have to cut it because it's time. But thank you so much for coming and sharing and enjoying this talk. Thank you.
I'm a beginner at all this.
Oh,
Very informative.
good.
Can I have that? What is your opinion of the hydrogen peroxide? That's what they said. I didn't read that. I know with the orchids, they use the hydrogen peroxide on the no, I'm not
So somebody wants to meet you. She has a dog.
I've had 10 of them, so
Probably took the same class together. Takes like they know everything.
You gotta say, your parents are.
That's exactly right.
It's the big dog.
So cute to see you.
I know it.
I gotta keep up my position. My landscape What is this? Is it fun?
I haven't, thank you. Oh, that's okay. I had one over there.
And it comes back nice and fresh. Nice meeting you too. Enjoy your retirement. Bye.
have those, but a lot of my
Okay. Uh-oh. Right.
And then over here is where I've got the,
It's where we are, like I take Vermont.
Oh, the neighborhood's on the pot. The neighbors are have.